Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Braver, and I am here with coLeague founder and CEO Laura Cover. And today we are going to be talking about the employee hierarchy of needs, as we've been talking about for the last few weeks this summer. And today we're talking about the second level in the employee hierarchy of needs, purpose. So we're going to have a little bit of a different format today. I am going to go over sort of a very quick overview of what we've talked about so far. And then Laura and I are going to have a discussion. She's going to ask me some questions. We're going to talk about purpose and how we can think about it really intentionally in how we set up our talent infrastructure and strategy in our organizations. So Laura, I'm going to pop you off the screen for a second. And I'll add you back. Okay. So for those of you who are new to coLeague, just as a quick overview, at coLeague, we bring people experts to mission-driven organizations, freeing up leaders to focus on their most mission-critical priorities. And we do that in three ways. First, we embed fractional people leaders in organizations, sometimes as chief people officers, sometimes as business partners, different roles. But in a fractional way, we have leaders working in an interim part-time basis, but at the same level you would expect for a chief people officer, HR business partner, etc. Second, we do quite a bit of specialized consulting and support, and that can be coaching, that could be working on a specific project with an organization related to their talent strategy or infrastructure. We do those sorts of things for organizations, sometimes in conjunction with having a co-leaguer, as we call our embedded fractional people leaders in the organization. And then third, we have a brand new service that we're really excited about called coLeague On Call. And this is a service that provides on-demand HR and talent support in a subscription style service. So this is for very small organizations who need expert level, top level advice, but they certainly don't need it all the time. So instead of trying to phone a friend, in this case, you phone an expert, and we're ready to answer and support whatever HR and talent questions you might have. So again, we're talking about the employee hierarchy of needs, which is a model that we use at coLeague, and it really is the basis of our talent diagnostic and how we think about your talent strategy and infrastructure and how it relates to the needs of your individual employees and the organization as a whole. And it's really to answer this question that leaders come to us with all the time, which is we have a whole list of talent stuff we want to do. We want a new performance management program. We want to redo everybody's job descriptions, all these different things, a huge list, but they don't know where to start. And so the employee hierarchy of needs really helps us to make sure that your employees' most basic needs are met first, so that those other talent things that you want to put in place will have a strong foundation and the employees are excited about it and feel safe and secure and have a strong sense of purpose in their work. And of course, if we don't do this and we just implement talent strategy and infrastructure at a sort of random pace or the pace at which people have asked for things, but we haven't done any deep thinking about the order to install it, it might actually backfire and might contribute to burnout, might contribute to turnover. It might even create a toxic work environment, which obviously we don't want. So the employee hierarchy of needs has 5 levels, and please go to our website and you can watch the overview of the employee hierarchy of needs video to go over all of these different levels and what they mean. And last time we talked about safety, which is going a little bit beyond physical safety and moving more into psychological safety. And we talked about making sure employees feel physically and psychologically safe and that they're confident that their employment is legal and secure. And if you go back and watch that video from 2 weeks ago, you'll see that we're talking about the moving psychological safety beyond its traditional definition of interpersonal psychological safety and thinking about how we can embed psychological safety into the way we build our systems and structures, the way we operate as an organization, not just how we talk to each other. That part's important, but it's not enough. We introduced a model called the SCARF model from David Rock, who is the head of the Neuro Leadership Institute and a researcher. And please go back and watch that video. Even if you just watched the scarf part, it's very useful for understanding the types of social situations that might lead your employees to feel super anxious and unsafe, and that you can very easily address with the basics of your talent strategy and infrastructure so their employees feel calm and secure. And so today we're talking about purpose. And we all know about purpose because most of us work for or have spent our careers in mission-driven organizations. And so when we talk about purpose, we're talking about a little bit more, and we'll obviously dig into that, but we say that employees know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how their work connects to the bigger picture. And in this, as I said earlier, when most organizations think about purpose, they're thinking about the mission, answering the question, why are we here? Well, we're here to make sure all children have access to a great education. Okay, we're here to make sure all new moms in the country have access to great healthcare. Like, these are big, important missions, and they can't answer the question, why are we here? But when it comes to individuals in your organization and on your team, thinking about their relying on their commitment to the mission at a very large scale might be a mistake. And we'll dig into that. Why the mission is obviously important, but for our individuals, for your team, we want to think on a smaller scale, to think about how people can be engaged and connected to the work. And that doesn't just rely on this like massive, potentially unsolvable mission that they might think about on a regular basis. And so what we're going to dig into is thinking about, are these statements true for everyone on your team? And after we go over this part, I'm going to have Laura join the conversation. So are these statements true for everyone on your team? One, I know what my job is, right? So we'll talk about ways that could be not true. I know why I'm doing my job. And again, that's in a more expansive definition than just the mission. I know how to do my job. And of course, I know I'm working on the right things. And so we have the safety level. Now we're thinking about the purpose level of the employee hierarchy of needs. And that means that these questions do need to be true for the members of your team in order for their purpose to be secure enough to sort of move up to the next level of the pyramid. So now I'm going to have Laura join us. Hi, Laura.
Hi there.
And so I gave Laura access to a bunch of information about this, and I'm really excited for us to talk through this because it's something I'm really passionate about, and so is Laura. So Laura, I'm going to let you drive from here on, and I'm here to talk about the employee hierarchy of needs when it comes to
purpose. Excellent. All right. Well, I'm very excited to dig into this. I think I want to go back to what you were just saying about mission and purpose, how they can be similar, but there are some things that are going to be different about them too. I know for senior leaders, this is sometimes a hard thing to get your head around because purpose and mission actually might be very aligned. But can you talk a little bit more about why that might not be true for everybody on staff, and what are some of the challenges of assuming it's true?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's the key question here, which is if you're a founder of a mission-driven organization, if you're an executive director for an organization, you either founded or decided to lead this organization because you care passionately about the mission, and you know that it's solvable, you know that it's possible to get these things done. And when you have a really, really small organization with only a handful of people, it might also be really easy for everyone in the organization to all just be thinking every day, all day about how we're going to spread the word about this. We're going to raise awareness. We're going to, solve these various problems that we see in the world and want to put our efforts and our resources into. But the bigger your organization gets and the more pretty standard like structures and hierarchies that we introduce into the organization, the further an individual's day-to-day work might get from achieving that mission. And so, when we think about a mission, like we'll just use a popular one, which is making sure all kids have access to a great education in the United States. Well, if you're an operations coordinator for that organization in a region and you're working on the spreadsheet for the hundreds of people who are going to come to a program in 2 weeks, like you really got to focus on that spreadsheet and getting that thing done. And when you're really sort of like stressed out, it's it's not really reasonable to ask you to be like, okay, I'm doing this spreadsheet for the kids, right? It's a lot easier for somebody to understand how their individual work connects to either the goals of their team, to the goals of the organization, the strategy of the organization, and of course, how the organization connects to the mission. And so if you have to jump from spreadsheet to all kids get a good education, that's a pretty big cognitive leap, especially to do on a regular basis. And so we have to think about purpose on the individual level, and not just for our junior folks who might have a more administrative type job, for all of our leaders, for all of our managers, thinking about how is the work that I'm doing today connected to the work that the whole organization is doing. And of course, knowing that you can trust that the organization is overall doing work toward the larger mission. And I think that is the key, is making sure everybody's connected and that there is an interlaced, interwoven set of strategy to goals to individual work plates, so people can map where they fit in that larger structure.
That makes sense. I mean, I think about our, so many of the mission-driven organizations that we've worked for, there was usually an interview question about that. There was usually some like, to what extent are you connected to the mission? And so that operations coordinator or that office manager, they are connected to the mission. And so like wanting to know exactly how their work is part of the piece of that pie makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so then what are the barriers around ensuring that your folks are living into their purpose every day?
Yeah, so going back to those questions, or statements that we want our, let's see if I can put them back up here, that we want our folks to be able to answer or be able to say is true. I know what my job is. I know why I'm doing my job. I know how to do my job. And I know I'm working on the right things. The barriers are barriers to these. And so one of the biggest ones, and you will hear me talk about this ad nauseum, is a really great job description, an accurate, up-to-date job description that reflects not only what the job was when you signed on, right? Job descriptions are more than just advertisements, but does it reflect where you fit in the organization now? Does it reflect your actual day-to-day work? Does it reflect the goals that you've agreed with your manager and with your team and with the organization? So a JD that's weak, that's not up to date, or it's too detailed or not detailed enough, can make you feel really disconnected from the larger picture, because you might even be scrambling all the time trying to figure out what you're even supposed to be doing. And of course, I know why I'm doing my job. Of course, that's related to the mission, but also, again, how does this spreadsheet today help kids? We have to connect it up through the goals of the organization. So a big barrier might be if you've got a really unclear organizational strategy, so the person can't actually see how the organization is relating its work to the mission. It might be shifting goals, moving goalposts, however we think about that. And that can be really detrimental to a person feeling connected and engaged, so that they can quickly map up to the mission and then back down to their daily work. I know how to do my job is, we wouldn't necessarily think about this connected to purpose, but it really is about enablement. If what we're doing is avoiding disengagement and avoiding detachment and avoiding burnout, if somebody is really not enabled to do their job, that is a very fast track to somebody feeling disconnected and frustrated, and there's too many barriers to be able to get things done. And this is a big one, the bigger your team gets, which is, I know I'm working on the right things. So a real barrier to that is a lack of clarity on the long-term work plan for your team, for the organization, lack of any assignments, what clear goals, like what you're actually supposed to be delivering, unclear deliverables. And these are all related to your individual, group, and organizational goals. If those things are not clear, or again, they're moving, not just the strategy moving, but the goals are moving, or the goals are not achievable, people will disconnect. They will just start phoning it in and doing whatever they can, because they're not excited to do the tasks if they can't feel a reason why they should be doing it.
It's interesting. I'm like thinking about, we've talked about this so many times, but I feel like I'm just having this thought right now that when you're starting a new organization and you're in that, startup stage, there is a few of you that are doing it together. Those, 4 questions actually could be no's because everyone's so like we are like all in on this mission. There's
Yeah.
only 4 or 5 of us. We are in constant communication. Even if I'm not the best one at doing this thing, like I'm gonna get it done because we got to get some stuff done, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And really, when we start to see this become more challenged, is the first round of hires. So it's not just the people that came in that were like, "Yep, we're all sort of brainstorming this idea together and doing this together," but it's the that very next stage. If folks don't know exactly what's needed from them, they're just going to feel sort of left out from the group that really is
Yeah.
driving the mission and purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
And then as an individual, if you're finding it frustrating or difficult to connect to the larger mission, because you can't connect to your individual mission, people, that could create a really awkward social situation if people think you're, quote, not committed to the mission. How frustrating that must be if you are, but you're struggling to figure out like why the thing you're doing this week or next week is connected to that. So I think that's why it's important to have this cascading from the strategy and the mission into your goals, into what every team is doing. So you can always, again, I'll say this a bunch of times, but like quickly map your way up to the big mission that's very motivating.
Yeah. I can also imagine some folks listening to this and thinking, I know I'm supposed to do those things. Like, I know we need to go through a goal setting process. I know I need to update the job descriptions, and there just is no time.
Right.
Tell us the flip side. If you don't do it, what are potential consequences? Motivate us, Sarah.
We've all been there. I've worked both in all the organizations I've worked in are mission driven organizations. Some were nonprofits, some were actually VC backed tech. And in all of them, the mission was big and very important. But in all of them, it was very easy to lose the plot when you get really, really busy. So the busier you are, the more hands-on you are, the harder it is to think about this big, might seem unachievable mission. So I think the biggest danger is disengagement, right? If a team member doesn't feel connected to the work, they're not going to feel connected to their peers, they're not going to feel connected to the organization, and then they might even stop caring about the bigger mission because they can't grasp it, they can't be a part of it. Like, we know that it's important for an organization to work to cure cancer, but again, if you're like a person who's organizing the files of the American Cancer Society, it might feel like curing cancer is impossible, and how am I even helping at this point? So disengagement is the first step on the way to burnout. It's the first step on the way to people feeling extremely like worst thing they can be is bored, frustrated, all of these feelings and then you have to keep working even though you don't have the motivation to do it. That's what really drains people and sets them up for these really difficult, hard to bounce back from burnout situations. And we want our employees to feel calm and safe and reasonable and not feel like they're doing make work. And that also leads to resentment. So some of this disengagement will lead to resentment if the people who are assigning them the work are acting like their work, is really important, but they can't actually map it to that strategy, into that mission. That can lead to a lot of resentment of like, you don't even understand what my job is. Like, why are you saying these things? And then the second danger, which is related, but it tends to affect our I don't know, like our type A, our quote high achieving type folks who will work no matter how they're feeling. That can lead to a lot of anxiety for those folks. And it's different than like clinical anxiety, but the anxiety that people experience when they feel like they don't have a say in what's going on. An unclear or shifting strategy can make it seem like your organization doesn't know what it's doing, and feel like the leaders aren't really in charge. And that will make a person who feels a strong sense of responsibility very anxious. They will start to climb up that map. They will start to think about, am I supposed to figure out what this organizational strategy is? Like, am I supposed to figure out how we're going to achieve this mission? That will cause all sorts of discomfort and anxiety that makes it very difficult. As we know from the employee hierarchy of needs, we know that if we're feeling anxious, especially this far down on the pyramid, then it's going to be really hard to get anything done. And people want to do a good job. They want to contribute. They want to be able to be a part of this team and this organization. But if they're feeling anxious and upset all the time, it might be hard to even just get the basics done. which then creates a spiral, right, of maybe a performance issue or that disengagement, whatever the things are that lead to disconnected employees, frustrated leaders, and people just not really able to push things forward in the way that they want to.
I mean, I almost think if you're really at that level of anxiety, you're now going back into the safety challenges, right? Like it has knocked you down one more level. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
And then you're like, well, if they don't know what they're doing, then I might, like, are we going to make it, or am I going to lose my job? Like, those types of things. And so another thing that I might bring up that we haven't talked about is, a way to alleviate this is transparency. So not just transparency around the organizational mission and that sort of thing, but when we think about goals and work plans, how transparent can you make that so that people can, on their own, come to those conclusions about how their work connects directly to the larger picture. It's definitely on the shoulders of managers to help their team make that connection. But on any given day, not everybody's going to have a one-on-one with their manager, and they need to be able to do it on their own. So being able to really think through, okay, how can I best approach this project? And there isn't a direct very specific link from this project to the larger mission. If they can connect it to the next level up and then the next level up, it starts to make a lot more sense. And then people feel more empowered, they feel safer, they feel more empowered. I think I said that already, but they feel enabled. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Like I'm just thinking about the current job market, right? We're working with clients, we're talking to previous colleagues who, when they put up a job, there's 1,000 people that are applying, right? Like it is a crazy job market, which means that people aren't leaving. So I can imagine, a challenge to purpose in normal, whatever that is, times might be that people would leave, right? Like
Yeah.
they feel disengaged, they feel anxious, they leave, they go someplace else. Right now, I don't think they're going to leave because they're nervous about going to find another job. And so that disengagement and anxiety is just sitting and building in your organization. And I can imagine that's getting very hard.
It's very contagious, I will say. And that's exactly it, is that when you get somebody who doesn't feel empowered either in their job or in the world, right? If they're like, I'm not getting what I need, or I don't feel like I'm contributing, but they also don't have an alternative, that burnout's going to be day two on that. And then you start getting into a really deep impact on individuals and feeling really disconnected, maybe not just from their job, but from other parts of their life. A job is only one tiny fraction of how people move through the world and think about the world, but it really can contribute, especially when folks are earlier in their career, can contribute to that sense of purpose, not just in the day-to-day job or the mission, but like figuring out who they are as a person. And so even though it's a small part of their lives, it's usually an important part of their lives, and it certainly takes up a lot of time. And so when we're thinking about people feeling disengaged and leading to burnout in this very important thing where they spend most of their time, it's really difficult to help them at that point, right? Like if you let your team get to that point, it's really difficult to rally once they've disconnected. And you can try with the mission, but it's a little too late at that point. So if they are moving through their work all the time, feeling connected to the larger strategy, if the strategy shifts, we shift how we're all going to address it, how that's going to affect my individual work, and we can stay. But once somebody has lost their connection, it's really hard to plug back in, because it's hard to work back up if you're disconnected from the larger mission. We hire people because of their commitment to and passion for the mission, and we have to keep that engaged by letting them feel connected, their everyday work connected to how the organization is going to approach that mission.
That makes sense. Okay, so you've convinced us that we need to be thinking about purpose, and even made us feel a little bit nervous about it. So what do we do?
I think there's a couple of things. Again, I talk about this all the time, but a job description is one of the most powerful tools you have at your disposal in an organization. It helps people have a reference point. It helps people think about, what should I work on next? And second to that is work plans, right? So what are we working on this week, next week, this quarter, next quarter? Not in necessarily detail, but at least we have a detailed picture of what things look like in the near future, and a more vague picture of what they're going to look like in a medium or longer term future. And then that transparency that I mentioned is super important. Transparency for the strategy, transparent on how we got to that strategy, right? So if even if you don't agree with it being the best strategy, you can at least understand why the organization is moving the way that it's moving. And again, that you can take a strategy in your own work that connects to that larger strategy. The third thing I would say is what we talked about with goal setting. So organization-wide goal setting process where people are setting goals around the same time, where our goals are related to each other. They don't feel arbitrary. They don't feel like the tail wagging the dog, right? Where you're just turning the work you're already doing into goals rather than setting the goals and turning that into work. This is something that can certainly happen. And just making sure that everybody can see how their work fits in. And then not just on the work plan, but a transparent work culture overall. So whether that's your communication systems or your information storage, whatever tools you use so that people can see what's happening and people they don't learn about crucial information only from a slide deck from an executive leader in the organization. That it's things are not, you don't want to be surprised, right? Like, oh, we know we've been going for that big grant and we got the grant. Exciting. It's not like just an announcement. So the more transparent you can be with what's happening, what's going on, whether that's, in tech companies, they do demos every 2 weeks of what they're working on, right? So imagine if a nonprofit did a demo of everything it's achieved every 2 weeks. That's probably a bit much, but you can start to see how that would keep people understanding what's happening and what's going on. So it's great job descriptions, transparency, and goals that map from the bottom to the top.
Great. And then I guess my last question is, so how do you know if you're doing this well?
I think the first one it feels really obvious. Like your teams are engaged, they're getting stuff done, they're not anxious. If you're like, how do I know they're not anxious? You do, because you certainly know if they are, right? If they're asking a million questions, if they feel nervous. And again, I've said this in every presentation about the employee hierarchy of needs, like the world is really scary right now and frustrating and difficult and confusing. And so if they're also feeling that way at work, it's going to be really difficult to get anything done. So any safety and purpose you can provide at work is a great way to at least increase the calm in their life. So you see engaged folks getting stuff done. But the second part that might not be as obvious is I think somebody who has a clear sense of purpose is excited to ask about what's next, right? They're thinking about the future. A secure person can think about the future. An anxious person is thinking about the past and the present only. They might be imagining different futures, but a person who's calm and has a really solid foundation is able to ask with an open mind and an open heart, what's next, right? Because they can trust that the organization is going to go through a process to explain why they're doing what they're doing and how their individual work can connect to that bigger picture. And they can feel really confident that they're contributing to the organizational mission.
I love that. And if they're talking about what's next, they're also thinking about staying for a while and being part of the what's next. And yeah, that feels exciting and fun. Great.
Yeah. And, I guess I think about this one until just now, but a calm person is a creative person. A person who is anxious and a person who feels a lack of safety and lack of purpose, like that creativity part of your brain is turned off. Like those two things cannot operate at the same time. They are literally systems that work like this. Only one can be up at any given moment. So thinking about the future is an act of creativity, right? We're imagining. Our imagination gets bigger when we feel safe and have a strong sense of purpose. And so next time when we talk about the next level up around structure, which is the things that most people start with when they start with their talent strategy and infrastructure, we'll talk about how to solidify some of these things. And so please do join us next time. Which is same time, same place. It's Tuesday, July. Help me out. Actually, I'll tell you.
22nd? Is that it?
29th.
Okay.
Tuesday, July 29th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Join us here. And then, of course, you can see this video on our website and all the previous ones on our website as well, which is coLeaguePartners.com.
Excellent. I'm excited for what's next.
Yes. Oh, good. That's good to know. Well, thanks, Laura. Thanks our back end team who's here helping us out as well. And everyone, have a really great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.